Hi, my name is Will Turnbull, and I'll be talking about Socrates today. So just some basic information. Socrates was one of the greatest philosophers of ancient times. He was born in 407 BC in Athens, Greece. Little is known about his life, but what we do know comes from writings from his students, Plato and Xenophon, as well as the plays of Aristophanes. According to Joshua Mark of ancienthistory.edu, most of our knowledge comes from Plato, however. These writings were not always completely about Socrates, so it's difficult to trust the words of these people, so most of the information that we have may not be entirely accurate. Socrates is known for his changing of Greek philosophical thought from the contemplation of the origin of the universe, which occupied the philosophers before him, to the observation of human life and how it reacts with its people and its problems. What he is most known for, however, is the Socratic method, which I'll get into later. Scholars have noted that the impact of Socrates on the development of Western culture and philosophy cannot be overstated, and some have suggested that his teachings influenced the development of Christianity. So just a little bit on his early life. Socrates was the son of Socrates and an Athenian stonemason and sculptor. His mother was Venerity, a midwife. It is believed Socrates worked as a stonemason for many years before he devoted his life to philosophy. Due to the fact that he didn't come from a noble family, it was likely that he just had a normal basic Greek education and learned from his father in his early years of his education. Historians argue over how Socrates supported himself as a philosopher. Xenophon and Aristophanes say in their writing that Socrates was paid for his teachings, whereas Plato thinks Socrates denied accepting money for his teachings. It is also believed that Socrates took over the family profession of stonemasonry from his father. Socrates married a young woman who he had 3 sons with. According to Plato's writing, Athenian law required all able-bodied males to serve as soldiers, so he served in the armored infantry. So just about his philosophy. He was one of the greatest philosophers in Western civilization and kind of set the groundwork for future philosophers to come. He was a strong believer that philosophy should have practical results that affect society for the greater good. He believed that human choice was motivated by their desire for happiness rather than other people or alternate reasons. He said that in order to have vast knowledge, one first must have vast knowledge of themselves. The more a person knows about themselves and the world around them, the better their ability to reason and make choices that will bring real happiness to them and people around them. He related this to politics, stating that the best form of government is neither a tyranny nor a democracy. It was his belief that democracy was too weak of a governmental system. Instead, it comes at a steady middle where government works best when ruled by individuals who have the best understanding about themselves and the people around them and the things around them. But anyway, the most known thing that Socrates contributed to philosophy was the Socratic method. And it's one of the oldest and most influential styles of teaching, which relies on causing their students to learn by asking questions rather than giving them the answers. So today you can find evidence of this in the formation of hypotheses in this scientific method. And in addition, most educators use it every single day without even realizing it. According to the University of Chicago Law School, Socrates engaged in questioning of his students in an unending search for truth. He sought to get the foundations of his students and colleagues used by asking continual questions until a contradiction was exposed, thus proving the fallacy of the initial assumption. So his later years in death, he was put on trial in Athens for 2 charges, 1 corrupting the youth of the city-state, and 2 enmity against the pantheon of Athens. Specifically, the trial cited 2 violations of the law by Socrates, 1 failing to acknowledge the gods that the city acknowledges, and 2 introducing new deities. What caused this trial to happen was his first group of students led an anti-democratic campaign against Athens. Socrates was told to stop and the group was dissolved. However, he resumed and another group took form and had another anti-democratic protest. He was convicted by a vote of 280 to 221. The defiant tone of his defense contributed to the verdict, and he made things worse for himself during the decision of the punishment. Athenian law allowed a convicted citizen to propose an alternative punishment to the one called for by the prosecution, and the jury would decide. Instead of proposing to be exiled like many thought he would, Socrates suggested that he be honored by the city for his contribution to their enlightenment and be paid for his services. This served as like a final defiant jab to the Athenian government, and the jury was not amused, so they sentenced him to death by drinking a mixture of poison hemlock. According to Plato, before Socrates' execution, friends offered to bribe the guards and rescue him so he could flee into exile. He declined, stating that he wasn't afraid of death and felt he would be no better off in exile. And he also said that he was still a loyal citizen of Athens, willing to abide by its laws, even the ones that condemned him to death. So at his execution, Socrates drank the hemlock mixture without hesitation. So just to kind of conclude on everything, Socrates was one of the greatest philosophers of his time, and he changed the world around him with his new challenging thoughts and ideas on politics and ethics, and he laid the groundwork for future philosophers to come. As one of the greatest teachers in Athens history, he came up with the Socratic method, which is essentially learning by asking questions and provoking students to ask questions about what they are learning. This method is still used in education today, like I stated, and it's one of the most influential education methods that has ever been created. And finally, he challenged the prior political thoughts of democracy, which ultimately led to his own demise. And he also challenged the thought of God and believed there was another spiritual being, which some say helped lead to Christianity. And that's it. Those are my references. Does anyone have any questions?